of basic urges that might be around. And it's useful to remember that our conscious awareness is emerging from these limbic landscapes. Our conscious awareness is relatively slow. It's highly controversial, even whether we are making the conscious choices that we think we're making, whether that's some kind of illusion that's given to us by our various neurological systems to make us feel comfortable, and as if we do have free will. And the debates go to and fro about that one. But because consciousness is slow, it takes time for that conscious awareness to emerge out of whatever situations we find ourselves in and whatever limbic influences might be present at a given time. A fascinating example of that is some research that's been done looking at people playing simple games of poker where they're relatively straightforward rules, but still sort of internationally agreed rules of poker, coupled up to galvanic skin sensors to measure stress levels. And the fascinating thing is that if this is done in laboratory conditions, so people are flashed a hand of cards, before there's time for the conscious brain to actually assess whether it's a good hand or not, the limbic system's already decided whether it's a good hand or not. So your limbic system at least can play poker in terms of its level of smarts. It probably can do a lot more. And I think it's useful to remember that when mammals came on the scene, mammals are the kind of group of creatures which have particularly expanded the limbic system, but also the cortices. But there are creatures out there that function pretty much on limbic systems alone, and they have highly complex behaviours. So it's reasonable to assume that anything an organism can do with just a limbic system can actually still be done by human limbic systems. It's just that we're not so consciously aware of that. It's a submerged behaviour that the cortex are more kind of recently evolved part of our brain.
If I apply that to my dog then, because my dog is highly anxious and responds to lots of, so I guess he's doing that as well. He has this from the past experiences that he remembers, because he seems to be anxious over a lot of different things, and that can be difficult.
But you can show, there's some fascinating research now looking at dogs and the fact they're able to do memory and cognitive tasks that few other creatures seem able to do. There's a particularly fascinating study where they show that dogs have representational awareness, and that dogs that are trained to get objects, you can show them a tiny model of an object, and they get that tiny model means get the big version. And there's actually very few primates that can actually do that. So dogs in their kind of co-evolution with human beings seem to do things that wolves can't do, that we've kind of trained up over the thousands of years. But even a bee, I was fascinated by this research recently, you can show that bees can symbolically translate a symbol into something meaningful. If you have a flight maze where bees can make decisions which way to fly down a whole series of tubes, and you put a symbol at the start of the maze that means only turn left, or don't turn left, only turn kind of the opposite right. If you put a blue disc on the start of it and a blue disc on each of the ones in the turn down, the bees will rapidly learn if there's a nectar reward at the end of the blue indicated passageway, so you fly that way. But they get that the symbol is what to look for. So if you train them with blue and then do red and have a series of red ones, they'll think, all right, it's probably looked the same, and work the way down the same set of passageways. So that's something that about 1 million neurons, less than the size of a pinhead, can do that. Well, our limbic systems are enormously more complex than that. So the level of complex interpretation they're likely to be doing, but that we're just not aware of, is probably phenomenal and is emerging as a story little by little. I tried to mock this up, but it didn't really work quite as well as I hoped. But this is the classic example of amygdala processing. So if you look at that cute little cat, so that, where there's relatively cute versus possibly threatening, you can show that if you flash something up for a tenth of a second, shorter than you can be consciously aware of it, your limbic system will have picked that up and will have sent a galvanic skin response, a set of change electrical conductivity in the skin, the pick it up through ECG changes, brain scans, will put you on alarm footing for a few seconds after being subliminally flashed with something threatening. So that means when you go into a situation, if just something vaguely threatening flips across without you even being aware of it, then you may well feel slightly anxious, slightly unnerved, without fully understanding why. Because the amygdala has said, hey, oh, something potentially threatening might be around. And the degree of obliviousness of our conscious awareness is classically illustrated by the gorilla experiment. You may have heard of this, where a group of people are passing a basketball hand to hand on a video, and people are asked to count how many times the basketball gets passed. In the middle of this, you may be aware of this, there's this video, this man in a very bad gorilla suit comes on, does that kind of stuff, dances around a bit, goes off. And surprisingly, about 40% of people don't see the gorilla. They're so fixated on counting the balls, they just don't notice what's happened in terms of the overall content. So a lot can be going on that our limbic system's picking up, but we're just not consciously aware of it. Look, anything just from that little set of thoughts?
Is that like how hypnotists work and that they've got, like, when they say they put, what's the word? Subject, yeah. In a kind of...
To an extent, I think the difficulty with hypnotherapy is that it often gets confused with the claims made by stage hypnotism, which are quite different. And really, the people are fully conscious of what happens under hypnotherapy and are making conscious decisions about what behaviours they may choose to do after the hypnotherapeutic session. But what's really interesting about hypnotherapy is it does seem to allow people to unhook the instinctive limbic patterns of behaviour from given situations, so that through, for instance, a colleague of mine works very much with people with phobias with hypnotherapy. I work with people with 30-year, 40-year phobias, and after half an hour chat, essentially, which is what hypnotherapy is, just very focused type of chatting, don't have the phobia anymore.
And is that just putting like the suggestions into the...
It's more about just helping people change the way they think and feel about the content of their experience. And the hypnotherapeutic state allows that to happen in a very focused and a very quick way, whereas it's not all situations can be helped by it, but particular things like discrete phobias are particularly well suited to things like hypnotherapy. And that's
so does hypnotherapy have anything in common with mindfulness meditation?
a lot, a lot in common in terms of when people, you can say what happens in hypnotherapy is people are able to access their resources much more effectively, so that rather than, I suppose to simplify overly, but rather than seeing a mountain as a mountain, they perceive it as a molehill and therefore feel they have the resources to manage it. The interesting thing about mindfulness practice is there's a lot of overlap between that sense of a resourceful state that people enter in deep hypnosis or in a therapeutic situation with when people feel particularly present in a mindful state. I think the difficulty we have with all of this is that, first of all, we don't know what consciousness is. Secondly, we don't really understand the process of memory. Thirdly, our limbic system is largely mysterious, as is our cognitive processes. No one has properly defined what hypnotherapy is. It's still highly controversial whether it is a discrete state or just a particular type of normal state that people are imagining is unusual, and so on. So it's all quite mysterious.
I actually do hypnotherapy.
Right.
And what I'm noticing as you were talking about this, I would be thinking subconscious mind, fight or flight sort of thing, but you're hitting it a different level with the limbic, and I'm thinking, well, is it the same thing? Or
I think
it's talking about conscious mind and subconscious mind, and if we access what meaning they attach to something, and then they then want to define that as they become